Hey everybody, we are live, and for the first time, actually the second time, but let's see how this goes. I did it once before, but the Facebook part didn't go so well. I'm doing a dual live broadcast, and in about less than 5 minutes, I'm doing a dual live broadcast, and in about less than 5 minutes, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell live stream will start, and he will step to the podium for what I've always called the state of the NFL, because that's what it is. He's basically the CEO of the firm, giving the board of directors, which really are the fans, and through the press, a report. Yeah, that's what's going on. So that will start. Thank you. In just a few minutes, and thanks. And we had a really surprisingly, explosively great Pepsi. What's the word I'm looking for? Super Bowl halftime. Yeah, Super Bowl halftime press conference, and discovered a new audience that is going to take this channel in places it's never been before. Wow. Really excited. So, without any further ado, let's go over and, join now. It says, open the Zoom. And, there, okay, so there's the NFL logo, and we will go back to StreamYard and make sure that it is centered, so that you can see it. And voila, there it is. So, like I said, we're early again. Kind of nice to be early. It means I can take a sip of coffee. I haven't had coffee all day long, folks. Woo, and I feel it. My head, you get those caffeine headaches. Oh, my Lord. Boyja. And when I say caffeine headaches, I don't mean caffeine headaches from having the coffee. I mean caffeine headaches from not drinking coffee for a while. I get those. I got one now. Okay, let's go back to. Ooh, this is hot. Let's go back to. So we don't get caught off guard there, because any second now, that logo will go away, and my guess, a podium will come up, because I believe they're using the Tampa Convention Center, even though they're socially distanced and a lot of people are virtual. So any second now, that'll pop up. And you might note, I've got my hand raised. Sometimes I get called on, sometimes I don't. But the whole purpose of this really isn't so much for me to get my ego fed by being called on. It's to bring you hear that? Scenes that you wouldn't normally be able to see. Stuff like this in a normal Super Bowl.
Your attention, please. If we can begin taking our seats. Your program is about to begin. So if you want to take your seat, we'll get assembled here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused. Wait, where am I?
Is that a super spreader event? Oh my Lord, I hope not. Oh no. I'm glad. See, that's why I'm glad I'm not there. Okay? That's why I opted for the NFL virtual option.
Okay, if you could take your seats, just a quick reminder of how we're going to do this before Judy comes back on air.
Open air, look at that.
I think she's off here, so we will welcome about 2:03. We'll have Steve Weiss will take a seat here. He'll welcome our TV audience as well as our virtual audience. We have microphones in the back, we have Taylor, and we have Sam from our staff. They're going to help arrange you.
Taylor!
We'd like to do it arc style, so 2 by 2. If you could line up when you're ready for your question. We'll take a number of questions from here.
Well, folks, see, talking about behind the scenes, you weren't supposed to see that. You know, that's again more behind the scenes. You weren't supposed to see that, and yet because you're here, you did. You're not going to see that on network television. See, the guy that was talking is NFL Vice President of Communications Brian McCarthy. He has served in that role now, I believe, for 6 years. Yeah. And he's a consummate professional. I don't just say that because he's my friend.
So I'll kind of go through that.
Okay, let's go back. It looks like we're going back to live festivities here. The event, the main event. Okay, here we go. It's 2:02. Any second now, that logo should fade away. Or just go away. Who you got for the game, by the way? I think the Bucks are going to win in an upset. I said years ago, I'll never again bet against a team with Tom Brady at quarterback. Of course, that was the Patriots. Yeah.
No, I didn't fight again. Good.
$203. Okay. Oh, I think they should have kept the camera running.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to the annual Roger Goodell, I want to call it the Roger Goodell News Conference here. I'm Steve Weitz with the NFL Network, and it's actually, a wonderful day here as we get ready for Super Bowl 55. It's the first time, Commissioner, we're able to see like a lot of members of the media, well, a small smidgen of the representative media in person. So it's actually great just to see some good friends and some good faces as we get ready for what should be a fantastic football game. Now, before we get started, we just kind of want to go through some of the gymnastics, so to speak, of how this is going to operate, since we are doing this in a different type of operation. Commissioner and I are going to have a couple questions here, and then we're going to open it up to the handful of socially distanced reporters who are here on site. And then we have a lot of reporters and journalists virtually who are going to ask questions too. So if I were you, I'd wet your whistle because I think they're going to be coming pretty fast and hard at you, Roger. So let's get this started. I mean, look, before the season, a lot of people were saying, hey, maybe we would get in 12 or 13 games. We're able to get in all the games, all 17 weeks. You got to jump through some hoops sometimes. But just the fact that in this coronavirus pandemic, that the league, the PA, the players were able to get here and us to be celebrating this game on schedule.
Yes, Steve, this was an extraordinary collective effort. There's so many people that had to work together to get this done. There were doubters, obviously. There were people that didn't believe we could do it. Obviously, we had a lot of unknowns ourselves. But we believed that staying on schedule and working towards trying to get 256 games done, as we sort of say shorthand, avoid the asterisk. And I think we were able to do that, but we still got a few days left here. So we're focused on making sure we finish out strong. But between our medical team, and Dr. Sills is here, all the experts that he brought together to help us to put the plan together, the players and the coaches and the clubs that did so much to implement those protocols and the intensive protocols and adapt throughout the season. And I think that's the big thing for us. We had to adapt at every stage, just like everybody else, just like the media, everybody else in this society. This was a year where we were all challenged. We all had to adapt, and we had to find innovative solutions to challenges. And I couldn't be prouder that the NFLPA and the NFL worked together, and I think unprecedented fashion, to be able to find those solutions together. Not only did we negotiate a 10-year CBA that was approved in March, literally the day of that, we started discussing about free agency and how free agents in the offseason would go forward. So it's been a lot of change, but it's also rewarding on that front. And the sacrifices that our players and coaches and everyone made, their families, is just extraordinary, and we're really proud to be here.
You did say you have a couple games to go. You know, schedule-wise, we are at the finish line with the Super Bowl. And the other day, Anthony Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci said that he wants to encourage people how to watch the Super Bowl and how not to watch the Super Bowl. Don't have massive gatherings. Don't do screaming and things like that. But what is the league's, I guess, messaging towards that, seeing as though the head of the infectious control and the advisor to the president is saying, tamp it down because we've seen gatherings are basically super spreader events?
Well, listen, we hope that we were in some ways representative of doing things the right way this season. We worked with the CDC, we worked with the White House Task Force, we worked with all the medical experts to make sure that we were, focused on how to do this safely for everybody. And that includes our fans. We had 1.2 million fans this year, and we were really proud of that because we did it safely for our fans too. So the same goes for Super Bowl Sunday. We want our fans to be safe. They need to be smart. They need to wear their PPE. They need to be gathering in small groups. We worked with the CDC about their advice that came out last Saturday about staying at home and doing it with family and household members. And we believe that's the way it should happen. We're all going to enjoy the Super Bowl a little different this year. And Sunday won't be any different.
Great. And before we get it out to the audience, one last question. It's different here, right? There's not the big events. There's not the parties. There's not the concerts and the tentpole events. But what about the way the city of Tampa has been able to adjust on the fly to host what is typically just an incredible, massive event that lasts for days and days?
Well, they've been incredible, and I know some of the Super Bowl host committee guys are here. I know Will and Rob are in the back, the mayor, the county, Derek Brooks, who's been extraordinary also. They've all worked together to find solutions. And at every challenge, as we looked and we challenged them, they came up with solutions. And so this community has done an absolutely extraordinary job. I'm always cautious of saying that until after we get everybody home and out on Monday. But they really, to this point, have just really gone above and beyond. And they deserve our praise and thanks. And I think the people here at Tampa should be very proud of the work that they've done.
I think they really should. It's been a really interesting kind of setup here. So, all right, Roger, I think we're done up here. We are going to turn it over to the reporters that are out here in the audience. So remember, please introduce your name, your affiliation, Fire away.
Hi, Roger. It's Lindsay Jones from The Athletic. A year ago, you stood in front of all of us, or a lot more of us actually, and you said that diversity in the head coaching ranks was a problem, and it was something that the NFL needed to take significant measures to address. In the months since, we've gone through the Black Lives Matter movement. Our country has gone through this racial reckoning. As a league and as ownership, you guys enacted some pretty significant changes, but here we are on the eve of the Super Bowl, a hiring cycle complete, and the head coaching numbers have not really changed. What happened this hiring cycle? How concerned are you personally and your staff at the league office? How concerned are you, and what more needs to happen to see different results next year?
Well, Lindsay, a few things. First off, I think and I've said this to you all many times, I'm not sure there's an issue that we spent more time working with our ownership on. Our ownership is committed, focused on this. And, we look at this as broadly as possible we want to make the NFL, our clubs, more diverse. And so it's much broader than just head coaches for us, but the head coaches is important. And we put a lot of our policies and focus on that this year. As you know, we had 2 minority coaches hired this year, but it wasn't what we expected, and it's not what we expect going forward. So for us, we want to continue to look and see what went right, what went wrong. I think that has to happen with individual discussions with candidates, both successful and unsuccessful candidates, the clubs, and try to understand exactly what went right and what went wrong. They're not the outcomes we wanted, and we're committed more than ever to make sure that we do that. But we want it to be a natural process. We want it to be a process that is what we believe in diversity is making us better ultimately. And so we'll get back. I've had a lot of conversations with owners and candidates over the last several weeks during the process, and there were some real positives for us here. I know people want to focus on the head coach, but there are a lot of positives. 3 new general managers that are African American. There's a lot more diversity in the coordinator position also, and across the league. So there are some real positives to build on, and that's what we're going to do. But we're not satisfied, and we feel like we can do better, and we're going to.
Hey, Roger, Ben Boland from the Boston Globe here. I have to ask you, of course, about Tom Brady. It's been almost 5 years since you suspended him for 4 games for Deflategate. And since that time, he's now in his 4th Super Bowl in 5 years. Just curious, what's your relationship like with Tom? What does he mean to the NFL right now? And do you still think that punishing him so severely was the right thing to do?
Hey, Ben, Tom Brady has shown that he is probably the greatest player to ever play this game. His leadership, his ability to rise to the big occasions and make everybody rise around him. That's what's absolutely incredible to me. Everyone just plays better when they're with him. And so he's an exceptional talent, but more importantly, he's one of the great guys. I've known him for probably 15 years, and he's an extraordinary guy. He's just, he's real, and he cares about this game deeply. He cares about the people involved with the game. And so for me, I wish him well. I think he's going to continue to be a great performer. I'm glad to hear he's going to play a few more years.
Roger, Mark Maskey from the Washington Post. Can you tell us where things stand on the investigation of the Washington football team? Have you received a report from Beth Wilkinson, or do you know when you will? And separately, on the ownership issues, do you have an expectation as to when that might be resolved and whether the minority shareholders will be able to sell their stakes?
Mark, you got a lot of things in there. So we do expect that Beth, I have not met with her yet, so I don't have any of her recommendations. She has nearing the completion of her phase of work, so she'll be sharing that work with me in a review at some point in the future. And of course, we'll share it with the Redskins and others. But
Washington football team.
Excuse me, Washington football team. I apologize. That's a bad habit. But to me, the important thing in the context of this, Mark, is that the Washington Football Club has made a lot of changes already. They asked for this type of review. They asked for the recommendations on this. And Dan and Tanya have already begun making those changes for the football club. And it's really, it's good to see that, but I expect that Beth's recommendations will be something that will be added to that. In addition, the limiteds and the dispute, as you know, that's an arbitration. I'm hopeful that that will get resolved shortly and that both parties or all parties can move forward and the Washington Football Club can continue to move forward.
Hey, Roger, Peter King with NBC. Just following up a little bit on Lindsay's question about minority coaches. In 2003, when the Rooney Rule was enacted, there were 3 black coaches that year in the NFL. And in 2021, there will also be 3 black coaches in the NFL. 2 additional minority coaches, but in a league that is about 70% black, everybody knows that this is a major issue. And I wonder if you would consider, having some sort of an ownership summit or something to, and I don't mean read the riot act to owners, but I mean to try to talk to owners personally, or maybe in a large group when you can get together, about emphasizing that we are not doing this well. We've got to do it better.
Peter, everything you just said there, I've said on multiple occasions this year. As I said to you in response to the question Lindsay asked, I'm not sure, other than the February meeting where we discussed the labor agreement, that we didn't raise this issue and the importance of doing this better, considering policies to help us in this case, and enacting policies, and the ownership shown their commitment in that. So the answer is yes, we'll have more discussions for sure, both individually and collectively when we can get together, but that doesn't stop us. We've been doing it on Zoom, we've been doing it individually, and the committee has been very active too, chaired by Art Rooney and several owners that are on that committee, and continuing to look, what are the changes we still need to make? And I'll reinforce again, while we may be disappointed in the head coaches, at the end of the day, there are a lot of positives here that we need to build on and we need to continue to make progress on. And that commitment is there.
Hey, Roger, Jarrett Bell, USA Today. How you doing? Good. I'm interested in how the NFL will roll out of this season of playing through a pandemic, and would like for you to detail how you envision the off-season in the league to proceed, and also to that end, next year with the preseason. I know there's been a lot of discussion over the years about scrapping the preseason. We didn't have one this year. And then more specifically, NFLPA President J.C. Tretter has suggested that the NFL do away with the OTAs and the organized practices during the off-season. Would you support that? And how will you process all of these things that you've learned this year moving forward that might be implemented?
Well, Jared, a couple things. First, I think we've proven that working together between the NFL and the NFLPA, that we've been able to put our differences away and aside. Not that we didn't stick to our core principles and do the things that we think were important, but we were able to find those areas of common interest and look past those differences to solutions. And I'm confident we'll be able to do that again. I think the challenges that are in front of us, I can't identify all of them, but my guess is right now they're less than where we were last year because we've had the experience of the last 6 or 7 months. And I think we have learned a great deal. So we want to look at the data, we want to look at the information. It's not a time to be taking positions publicly. It's a time to be able to look at that data and then sit down and talk about it with respect and understanding and try to get to the right outcome. So from that standpoint, I expect the off season, we were already started on that. The combine is already going to go through significant changes, which is just a few weeks. We anticipate that I think a lot of the things that we did last year with respect to training camps, to respect to the off season, the virtual is going to be part of our life for the long term. I think we learned, and the coaches learned, the players learned, that it was actually a very positive way to install offenses and to work in the off season. So I think we'll see more of that for sure. But I also believe, our coaches feel strongly, and, we'll talk about this with the union, that there's value in the training camp. There's value in practices. There's value in having preseason games where you can develop young players and give them the opportunity to get better as football players. The veterans may not need that as much. So those are the types of things I think we'll balance as we come in to the off season, and I'm sure we'll come up with solutions for that.
Hi, Commissioner. Jenna Lane, ESPN. Back in August, 2 former players filed lawsuits claiming that the NFL was discriminating against Black players when it comes to concussion-related claims. Are you guys looking into this? I know a report also surfaced on ABC that some doctors actually fear discrimination is taking place.
Well, I think, and I'm pretty sure I understand the case that you're talking about. First off, the concussion settlement is something that is overseen by a federal court. The federal court approves the settlement. The federal court is overseeing the operation and implementation of that settlement. And we are not part of selecting the clinicians, the medical experts who are making the decisions on a day-to-day basis. That's done by independent clinicians. And so, obviously we'll work with the court. We'll continue to see if there are changes that need to be made, but those will be determined by the court.
Hi, Roger. Rob Motti with the Associated Press. Before the season, you delivered a message that was widely interpreted as an apology to Colin Kaepernick. Looking back now, how do you feel that Colin's career seemingly ended because of actions that are now being embraced, but initially were viewed negatively?
Well, I would tell you that, I said very clearly back in June that, we wish we had listened to our players earlier. That was, and we had a lot of players that were coming and bringing these issues to us, and it didn't start last summer. It started over 2 years ago, and we've been working with the Players Coalition over that period of time. Colin was one of the individuals who obviously brought a great deal of attention to this. And for that, he deserves our recognition for that and appreciation. But there are a lot of other players. And actually, many of the demonstrations started back in 2014 with Ferguson. So from our standpoint, we now, I think, have a platform and an ability to work with our players to address those issues that they've identified in their communities and our communities that we can help and we can address. And there's a commitment on behalf of the entire ownership to that, not just financial, but more importantly with our resources. And we'll exceed that. And I think the players deserve a lot of credit for that. And I think the clubs do for supporting that. And we look forward to making a difference in our communities.
Hi, Roger. Judy Batista from the NFL Network. Given where we are right now and what you anticipate about the continued rollout of the vaccine, how close to normal do you expect next regular season to be in terms of fan attendance and also in terms of the need for protocols for players?
Judy, I wish I knew the answer to that. One of the things that I think I have learned and I think all of us have learned is try not to project too far in advance because it's difficult to do. Go back to last March and early April, trying to project what the environment was going to be like from a safety standpoint and where the virus and the pandemic was, even to the draft 3 weeks later. That's when we made the determination we needed to go virtual. We needed to be prepared to do that and make the decision as we got closer, whether it was safe and the appropriate thing to do. I think that's true with everything we do, is wait as long as you possibly can, be prepared for the uncertainty, and find solutions, work the problem. And that's what we've done. I don't know when normal is going to occur again. And I don't know if normal ever will again. I don't know if anybody here can do that. I know this. We have learned to operate in a very difficult environment. We have found solutions, and we'll do it again. And that's what we believe is a lesson for us this year, is the relationships that will, I think one of the most impressive things to me and meaningful things to me was hearing clubs and the NFLPA say, our relationship has never been stronger. the communication and the fact that we're all working together as a team, and I interpret that as a trust that's built here, will help us going forward. And it'll be really the long-lasting legacy, I think, of this season ultimately.
Roger, Sam Farmer of the LA Times. Next year's Super Bowl presumably will look much different than this one. It'll be in Los Angeles, which hasn't hosted a Super Bowl for 29 years. It'll be played in a stadium that will be at the end of its first season with fans and in the shadow of NFL media. How do you assess the challenges and opportunities of the Los Angeles Super Bowl?
Well, Sam, I haven't given an awful lot of thought to that because I'm still trying to get through Tampa, to be honest with you. But, that facility, I was there for the kickoff game, and it was the first time, obviously, being in there for an event. And it is remarkable, not just the facility, the stadium itself, but the surrounding area. And we're really excited about being there. We think that stadium is obviously going to set a new standard in the world. And so to bring our Super Bowl there will be exciting. Again, I don't know what the environment's going to be like by next year. We'll be prepared for that. We hope it'll be filled with fans, and not just in the stadium, but around the stadium and enjoying the facility. And we will be back to more of a normal cadence. But safety has driven everything we've done this year, and safety will drive that decision as we approach it, making sure that we keep, obviously, the participants as well as our fans and other safe through that process.
Hey, Roger, Sal Palantonio, ESPN. Hope you and your family are doing well.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Good. Roger, it's been an enormous undertaking to get to the doorstep of the Super Bowl, but you've had some challenges, obviously, along the way. And I wonder if you would take us behind the scenes to those meetings and discussions that you had when you had outbreaks with the Titans and the Ravens and the Browns. And, those moments where you talk to your staff and perhaps your family about, am I doing the right thing here? And was there a moment where you said, maybe we should just call a timeout to this season?
Sal, we really, we didn't wait for those outbreaks to have those conversations. That was part of putting the protocols together, and the teams working together with medical experts that were specializing in infectious disease and really could give us insight, as well as the staff that just did an incredible job of adjusting at every stage. Sure, those periods of times when you're not sure and you can't get a handle, particularly, it started in Tennessee where we weren't sure how to control this, what was causing this. Those were some anxious days. There's no question about it. But we believed in our medical experts. We believed in the protocols. We were able to get that under control, and we learned a lot from that we then applied and changed. And I think that helped us. And then, when we had, as an example, the Baltimore case, we were able to identify that quicker, but we were able to identify where the source was better. And then every stage we learned from that in being able to identify this and isolate. So our whole concept here was not to avoid positives. We knew that was not possible when you're dealing with 7,500 people in our system. Essentially, we're being tested almost every day. That was not going to happen. But the idea is to test frequently, identify when you have a positive, and isolate, and make sure that we trace that properly to identify people that may have been in close contact. And that's where we really learned, in addition to some work with Yale, to be able to identify how the spreading occurred. And that's where we really felt the confidence that we could do that, and we could be in a position to keep our personnel safe at all times. And Dr. Sills makes a point all the time. We don't think there was a safer place to be than in NFL facilities this year. We never doubted that for a second. You've got human behavior here. As Dr. Sills likes to say, that the protocols are simple, but they're very difficult to execute on because there's no margin for error. It can be very simple. It can be 3 people going into a room that's not well ventilated,
Yep.
that they stay in too long, where they're not wearing their mask, and you have a problem there. And so I think our personnel started to learn that, is that, we weren't going to compromise on safety, which we never did this season. We did not put competitive issues ahead of safety. We put safety first. And when we had those safety issues, until we could control that, until we were certain that we were not going to put any of our players or coaches or other personnel at risk, we weren't going to put them out there. And that's what you had in Tennessee with the delay. That's where you had the delay with Baltimore. That's where, you saw it in Cleveland where, the head coach couldn't participate because it was in violation of our protocols. So again, safety was driving every decision we made. And we talked about that throughout the off season, into the season. And I think, and this is where I'm incredibly proud of our staff, our clubs, there was never a question that we were going to implement those protocols to the highest standard possible and keep our players safe and our personnel safe and never compromise on that. And it did not happen. And that to me is what, to see our group come together and find solutions for difficult problems is something that I'll always be proud of.
But when those stories started to come back to you and you had those anxious moments, what was that like for you to have to make that final decision on some of that stuff?
Listen, it's never good to make decisions where there's so much uncertainty, right? That's the hardest problem we had this year, is you had so much uncertainty. Decisions are easy when you have certainty and you know that this is going to happen, this is going to happen. What was difficult, during the season was trying to manage things where there was a lot of uncertainty. But what we could do is we could determine when it was safe and when it was not safe. And we did not proceed when it was not safe. We were able to understand that, and until it was controlled, we didn't move forward. And, we were down to the final days in that Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. Had that not cleared on that Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, we probably would not have been able to play that Wednesday game. And we may have had an 18th week at that point. But it did clear. Our medical people were exactly right. We were 24 hours later than we thought. But that's the kind of decisions that, we were able to find solutions to give us that time to make sure that the safety issue was addressed properly.
Hi, Roger. John Romano with the Tampa Bay Times. You were very complimentary in your opening remarks about the work that the host committee has done in staging this event in some challenging conditions. Given that communities vie to host a Super Bowl for the economic benefits that it brings, Tampa Bay is going to lose a lot of those benefits because of the lack of travel to the community this week. Given those circumstances, would you anticipate that Tampa Bay would get special consideration when it comes time to choose host cities for future Super Bowls?
Well, I never want to get into specifics on that because it's ultimately an ownership vote. But I think everyone knows the unique circumstances that we face this season. They also know how extraordinary Tampa has been in working through that. I think that'll be a big consideration in their minds when they do sit down and vote. We recognize that it may not be the full extent of economic benefit, but in some ways, I think this whole pandemic and this ability to work through this is really going to be a reflection on this community's can-do attitude and how they get things done. And, they never wavered about moving forward with this game, and they've never looked forward and said, we want to have a game in return. Those are the kind of people who make this world special, and I think the NFL will recognize that going forward.
Hey, Roger, Albert Burr from Sports Illustrated. Have you guys worked on any sort of standard as far as what it'll take to start to loosen the protocols, and how would the vaccine play into that?
Albert, we really, listen, we're proponents of the vaccine in the sense of, I think we all have a valuable role as a league to endorse that. I think we're doing that here with 7,500 vaccinated healthcare workers in the sense of saying that's important for the health of our communities. Medical experts are telling us that, and so we want to support that. We have supported that. We said many times, we're not going to jump in line. We think that the priorities that are established by the health experts to get the frontline workers and others, teachers, vaccinated are things that are necessary. So we never relied on that. We stayed with our protocols, and we didn't rely on vaccines. It's too early to say whether the vaccines will be part of the solution. We expect that they will. We hope that much of our society will be vaccinated by the summer. Because it's in the best interest of our country and the health of our people. So we'll adapt, and if our protocols have to adapt to that, we will.
Roger, Tom Pellicero, NFL Network. Albert stole half my question, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm curious at this early stage, still 7 months out from the 2021 season, based on what you're hearing from your medical experts, do you anticipate unvaccinated players participating in games in the 2021 season? And in terms of fans, is it a viable option to have only people who are vaccinated attend games next season to expedite the process of getting back to full stadiums?
Tom, listen, it's far too early to get into that because we don't have answers for that at this stage. They're just questions, and I don't have answers for those today. There are things that we will work on. We'll work on with the Players Association on many of those and all of those. But we also will work with local health officials and medical experts to make sure that if we do have opportunities to bring fans back into the stands next year, how do we do that safely? And, we do that at 1.2 million fans got to attend an NFL game this year safely, without any outbreaks or any root cause that and attending those games caused a health hazard in the community. So we're proud of that, and we're going to build on that.
Okay, great. Now to go to this is the world we live in portion of this news conference. We're not going to go virtual. So we know all the Zoom lingo. So all of those are going to be asking questions virtually. Let's go through our Zoom rules. We're going to use the raise hand function. Keep your video and audio off until you are called upon. Okay, are we gonna be able to see these folks here? All right, so let's open up the screen here, and Richard Graves, our good friend from over in London at Sky Sports, you are up first.
Richard looks very comfortable.
Hi, Roger. Sorry, there was a delay there. Obviously, it's great that the NFL have managed to get this far in the season, and we look like we're going to have a Super Bowl on Sunday. Looking forward, I appreciate what you say about the uncertainty of predicting the future. But what is your desire and outlook as regards having international games back on the schedule next season? And realistically, how late can you leave it before making a safe decision on that?
Well, Richard, we are planning for our international games in 21. That's the approach we're going to take. We obviously are going to stay in close contact with our partners in the UK and in Mexico and make sure that we are doing that safely. If at any point in time we don't think we can execute on it safely, we'll make that determination. Last year, I think we ended up deciding not to play the international games sometime right before the schedule was announced. I think it was in April. And I think that was done after a lot of consultation, not only with our medical officials, but also looking at the risks with the Players Association of traveling the entire party over in a stadium that we weren't able to implement our protocols in. Not that they don't have protocols, but we had very tight protocols in our stadium. It felt it was safer to keep them in our 30 stadiums here in the country, where we knew those protocols were being implemented along and consistent with our policies. So we hope to get back there, and we're planning for it, and we'll make that decision whenever we have enough information to do so.
All right, now let's go to Kansas City and Darren Smith.
Good afternoon, Mr. Goodell. My question for you is, actually, I was speaking with Steve Weiss about this yesterday. Do you think that the owners and the NFL should actually wait till after the Super Bowl to hire and interview coaches, so that way it's a more fair and level playing field for coaches, maybe such as Eric Bieniemy, who was penalized for playing or coaching so long into the postseason?
You know, Darren, this is an issue. We had a lot of discussion with the Fritz Pollard Alliance, who we worked very closely on developing the policies this offseason. Many coaches, and it's something I'm sure will be brought back up again. As you know, this season, as part of our policy, where technology really actually was a benefit for us, was this technology we're going through right now, virtual. They were able to have interviews by Zoom, and that gave coaches an opportunity to interview without being as disruptive for their preparations while they're in the postseason. Head coaches felt better about it, and we made a lot of exceptions to that, including with Eric, to be able to have those interviews to give him the opportunity to be able to consider it in that. So that was a plus, and we made changes on the fly with respect to giving them that opportunity, which we think were beneficial to their candidacy. But it didn't lead to the opportunity for Eric. I think it's one of the things, Eric's a great football coach. I talked to Andy about him an awful lot, and I think we want to hear from him. I've talked to a couple other coaches that are in the league now that didn't get an opportunity, both white and black, who talked about that potential change. And so we'll have to balance that and think if that's the right outcome or whether there's some other alternative.
Roger, if I can follow that up, though, because I think one of the things in talking to people is once that first domino falls in terms of a coaching hire, the rush to hire other coaches so they can build their staffs is one of the reasons why things happen so quickly. If you do delay it till after the Super Bowl, do you think that kind of levels out the pacing in terms of maybe freeing some people up in that regard?
Well, Steve, I'm not sure I agree with that all the time, because last year I think Cleveland didn't hire a head coach until early to mid-February. And they weren't in the Super Bowl. So, I think that what we really have talked an awful lot about is slowing the process down and making sure teams have the opportunity to look at a diverse slate of candidates, to really understand some of those candidates and the qualities that they bring that they may not have been exposed to for some reason or another. And so one of the things we really want to do is talk to those decision makers. To have more minorities involved on the ownership level, more minorities involved at the head coach level and the general manager level, to make sure that we're getting that kind of consideration when we're making those decisions, and have the time to do that, because it is competitive. We all know that, and there is a feeling of urgency to make sure that you get the right coach and get the right staff. And so we understand that balance, but it's got to be a balance. And so those are the things that we've sort of debated. I'm certain that we're going to have that conversation again. And, we'll look to see if there's some additional policy that we can make. But we start by assessing the situation and analyzing and listening to everybody, and then coming up with what are the changes we should make that ultimately are going to lead to better outcomes. And outcomes that we think are beneficial to the league overall, so that we're a more diverse league, which will make us a stronger league.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Eben Novi-Williams from Sportico.
Hey, Roger. Thanks for doing this. A couple, almost 10 years ago now, you laid out a revenue target of $25 billion in revenue for the league by 2027. Obviously, before the pandemic, things looked pretty good, and you're in the middle of negotiating media deals right now. Can you give us an update on that target? And did the pandemic change anything about the long-term business targets for the league?
Well, one of the things that we've always talked about in the context of the NFL is how do we continue to grow? How do we continue to develop our fan base on a global basis, make our game stronger and more competitive, and continue to grow revenue, because that's part of our partnership with our Players Association too. They get a percentage of that revenue. I would tell you that in my personal view, that in environments like this, stronger organizations and stronger brands get stronger in environments like this. I believe the NFL has and will. I think there's a flight to quality when you get into circumstances like this. And, you look back at the season, we talk about just being here and playing. but we are playing at the highest level, and maybe with a degree of competitiveness that we've never seen before in the NFL. It's not just that we're playing at an extraordinary level. The highest scoring season in our history. Incredible young players, incredible veteran players, as we're seeing in the Super Bowl. We're seeing competitive games, even with high scoring, that we've never seen before. 70% of our games are within 8 points. It's not just that we're playing at an extraordinary game and an extraordinary level that has never been seen before. And I think the future of this league is incredibly bright because of those great young players, those great young teams. And that's what our objective is here. I believe our league is still, the best days are ahead. I'm very confident about that. But that's going to take a lot of hard work, and it's going to take the partnerships that I think we were able to strengthen this year. And I believe that's going to be part of our success going forward.
It's a great jumping off point because we're done with the virtual aspect of this. But you talked about how competitive it was and how we're playing at the players are playing at such a high level. Well, and someone mentioned J.C. Tretter, the head of the Players Union, said because of that, there's no reason to really resume the offseason and things the way we've had it. So let's bring up DeMaurice Smith from the Players Association to also talk about that. There he is. Hey, now this is sharp dressed man right here. All right, but about that, so DeMaurice, good seeing you. We're here. I don't have my mask on. I don't want to get too close to you. But just, about that, you heard Roger, what he had to say about you guys have to really assess the data before how to proceed. What's the take from the PA?
Folks,
Well, the first thing is I'm going to manage to get through this holding the shield without it exploding in my hand. But, look, we've done a lot of things together this year that we've never done before. I think we've learned that football can evolve. We've learned that we can move outside of our comfort level and work better and work smarter. So we're going to look at a lot of data. We're going to look at the issues that our players have told us about how they feel about the game, how their bodies feel, how their minds feel. I heard Roger earlier. When you think about a season in a pandemic where we've set scoring records, and we also look at the fact that penalties are down, it tells us a whole lot that we can always learn to work smarter and work better. And by the way, what a great message for the country, right?
Absolutely. Okay, Dee, we got a question for you from Mark Maskey of the Washington Post.
For both of you, when you look at this relationship over the years and trace it and everything that's happened, and then looking at this year, from the CBA through all that you've dealt with to get through this season, how do you think that relationship has it changed and evolved? And sort of related to that, Roger, do you expect the owners and the league to exercise their option for a 17-game regular season starting next season?
Well, I'll start off. Look, we've had our dust-ups in the past. I know, it's hard to, they're just a few. But, this season, it really took all of us to get through this. And I'm really proud of the partnership that we have with the NFL. I'm proud of Tom Mayer, Dr. Sills, Larry Ferrazzani, Sean Santaberi. Look, between those four people alone, they carried sort of the yeoman's weight of getting us here. And we have a fantastic business, a great game that we only are able to do together. So I think the way in which relationships evolve and progress, again, using your words, I think the best days of the NFL are ahead of us.
Yeah, I'd agree. Listen, like any relationship, it evolves. I had to go back, and it was 11 years ago. We were in a battle to get a new collective bargaining agreement. We worked our way through that. We signed a 10-year collective bargaining agreement, and now we've signed a 10-year extension. I think that may be the only time in the history of the NFL we've had that kind of a relationship. Yep. And that comes with growing pains, and it comes with meeting challenges. But I think what I mentioned earlier is that we have worked together to find solutions and look past our differences and be able to find those solutions in an innovative way. We are looking at the 17-game schedule. I think, Mark, that was part of your question. We've already agreed to that in the collective bargaining agreement. There's still more work to be done on that, but once the game is done, we'll turn our focus a little bit more to that. And even though we have the option, we're going to continue to talk about this. I talk with Dee about these issues all the time, and making sure that the decisions we make here are done with a lot of input. Because I think one of the other things we learned is that the input we had to one another last year, what I call the mini CBA, which last summer, which didn't feel like a mini CBA, but the input for one another helped us. We both found different solutions, and together we were better for that ultimately. And so, yeah, we'll look at all the information, we'll share thoughts, and we'll, I'm sure, come out a better place.
Very good. All right. Well, we're finished there, and gentlemen, the novel idea of working together makes us better, and we can evolve.
If we're forced to do it, we'll do it. But hey, look, just to foot stomp that, we're a labor union, and if we have to mix it up, we have to mix it up. But this year has been, I think, across the businesses in the country, one of the best examples of labor and management working together to do something that we couldn't do alone. And if that's a great example of how two people on the opposite side of the spectrum can come together and create something great, then it should stand for something great.
Excellent. Well said. Well, Commissioner, thank you so much for taking the time. We're going to take about a 7-minute break, and then you're up. Sure. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah.
So, folks, we're gonna just leave it here because he's up, as he said, and I think I have to switch cameras there because I know he's up, but it's actually a different window. So let me see what's going on here regarding how that works. Thank you all for